Fit to Love, episode 18, The 5 Love Languages.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Sexy Saturdays. Today's show, The 5 Love Languages. Today's show is based on the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's the secret to love that lasts. I found this book probably about 7 years ago, right around the time I was engaged and going to be married, and of course moving in with my husband-to-be, and having us really settle into our relationship and then watch how that honeymoon phase starts to change. I think I talked about it a little bit on the top 5 myths of marriage on our last Sexy Saturday. And one of the great things about this book is it's one of those explanations for why people see the world differently and how they interpret information. I talked about it yesterday on Freedom Friday's How the Law of Attraction Really Works. We went through the difference between thoughts and feelings and which comes first and how people look at things and then interpret what they mean. And some of the filters of those interpretations can be broken down into the 5 love languages. I use a lot of different criteria for interpretation. Astrology is one of them, and we're going to talk about that on Freedom Fridays. How people see the world is very different and based on a number of factors. Obviously, how you were raised, where you were raised, the modeling from your parents. And when it comes to expressing and communicating love, the 5 love languages did a great job of categorizing into a simple way, into 5 simple steps, different ways people communicate love. I had heard it before through speakers and presenters and therapists who were doing motivational speaking, but up until that point, I really kind of gravitated towards people who spoke the same love language as I did when it came to romantic relationships. And first, I'll say that when you're in a relationship that is the one that you're going to choose to be in, at least for the longest period of time you can commit to, whether it be forever or not. Let's say you're wanting to get married or you are married. At that beginning of that honeymoon stage, I would probably say, based on Dr. Chapman's work, he's written a couple different books, that most people do most of these affirmations. Love language is all over the place because you're in that honeymoon stage and almost everything you're doing is expressing and exuding love. And even if you're not practicing all the different love languages, the person who you're with could potentially be just feeling so loved that you're not missing anything. It's not until we kind of come down out of that honeymoon stage where you feel more comfortable and you feel settled into your relationship, do you sort of revert back to who you are when you're not on your best behavior. And then next comes, depending on lots of factors, if you give and receive love differently, then there starts to be confusion and frustration and misunderstanding about how one feels and why one isn't feeling loved and how certain actions aren't being received in the way that you'd like them to, or why is my partner not doing this thing anymore that they were doing when we were first together? And it can start to feel like there's a disconnection in your relationship, when actuality what's happened is that you've sort of reverted to whatever your dominant love language is, and now there's a disconnect. Because now you may have a different love language, most likely, than your partner, and you don't know that, and you're not aware that these categories exist. Dr. Gary Chapman is a therapist, and over the course of his time as a therapist, he started to notice patterns in couples and communication, and that's how he got the information to write this book. And it's been a lifesaver for so many people. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list forever, many, like hundreds and hundreds of weeks, and there's a quiz. So I'd invite you to go to 5lovelanguages.com. If this show is of interest to you, buy the book, absolutely, and take the quiz so that you can see what your top love language is. So now let's go over what the love languages are. There are 5, and the first one is words of affirmation. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's when someone gives you a compliment. They prop you up with words. They notice things that you do and they say, and they use their words to evoke a positive feeling in you and you feel loved or not based on the fact that they're complimenting you. So words of affirmation really is about acknowledgement, using words, accomplishments. My father is definitely words of affirmation. I grew up having him tell me, boy, don't you look snazzy. He would just say very positive things. And he was a very chipper kind of man in the morning and, didn't really complain. And I know for a fact my dad's number one love language has to be words of affirmation. Number 2 is quality time. So just like it sounds, it's when, for you, one-on-one time with someone or quiet time or doing something that has a connection or a deeper meaning with someone is quality time. And I have learned throughout the last 7 years in my marriage and with my friends even, because I think for love relationships, you may have one love language, but then for your friendships or maybe even your family, you have another one. So we have like 2 major love languages. The first one's the dominant. The second one's sort of like your second most expressed and way of receiving love from another person. But I recognized this with a friend of mine who was coming to visit, and I was excited that she was coming, and all of a sudden I had heard about her plans for the time she was going to be here. And it was very, very busy. And in that busy schedule that she had put together, there wasn't really a lot of time that I got to spend with her while she was here by herself or doing something, or even at my own house. There was no time really spent at my house when she was here for a very short visit, maybe 3 or 4 days. And at first I felt sad and I got this little pit in my stomach and I thought, ouch, I would have hoped that she would have wanted to come and spend more time with me. And I was hurt. Now, I knew enough at that point to not turn around and necessarily blame her for hurting my feelings, but I had to acknowledge that I was sad and I was a little frustrated that I wasn't considered. And then really quickly after I was noticing how I was feeling and having this conversation with myself, I realized we have different love languages, because I know she loves me and I know she wants to see me, and definitely we did see each other. But in that moment, I realized that quality time is my love language when it comes to friends, without a shadow of a doubt, because it was really important to me, obviously, that I spend quality time with her. And the fact that I saw there was one thing on the schedule that was quality time, but I didn't see a lot of quality time. And my response to that physically and emotionally was very sad. And so at that moment when I could recognize, oh, we have different love languages, then I could release that, acknowledge it. I was saddened by it for sure, but I didn't blame her. And I even told her that, I wasn't really interested in following her around on her very busy schedule, because that's not something I like to do and that I prefer quality time, but that I acknowledged that we just have different love languages. And then as I started to take a step back, I noticed all the little things that showed me what her love language was and the ways that she shows me that she loves me. And it was really nice to identify it and to not be offended. Even though I was still sad, I knew not to be offended, that I wasn't taking it personally. She wasn't rejecting me. There's always an opportunity when you have a feeling like that comes up, that people can take it more personally. And I knew that it wasn't personal. And if you do take things personally, I definitely invite you to go back and listen to episode number 4. There are 2 versions of it. Listen to the new improved sound version. It's about not taking things personally. So I knew not to take it personally, but I wanted to figure out where the disconnect was. And the disconnect was just that very simple concept of that we have different love languages. And mine with friends is by far quality time. And I even realized that was true because I thought back to another friend who had moved out of town and had come back to visit, and she and I went wine tasting. And when she comes back to visit, she usually carves out some time for me. And the last time I saw her, we had some wine, and I remember being very, very sad because I missed her so dearly. And I felt really special and really connected and really happy that we had had that time together one-on-one. So you don't have to take the test to know what your love language is. If while I'm talking about these, it sticks out to you and you recognize how you give and receive love, then you can probably identify the top 2 love languages. But definitely the test is fun to take. So the third love language is gifts. So the friend I was talking about who was visiting and had a very busy schedule, her love language is gifts. Every time she goes on a trip, she ends up buying me a little something, a pencil and some chocolate or a scarf or something, and she sends it to me. My mother sends gifts all the time. My mother is extremely generous about gifts. I get care packages and I'm in my 30s. I've been getting care packages my whole life because my mother's love language is gifts. So gifts, obviously, is what it sounds like. It's when you give and receive love through items. And obviously, most people like getting gifts. It's just the importance that you put on it. So all of these aren't necessarily going to be equal to you, of course. But for some people, it's not necessarily a judgment to say, well, you really like material things because you like gifts. It's that might be their love language. That might be the way their parents showed them love, was to go travel and bring home something for them, and it let them know they were thinking about them. So for some people, the effort of buying a gift is really touching to them. While I do like gifts are not nearly as important to me as quality time. So I would prefer to have someone's undivided attention for a lunch or want to come spend time with me or go dancing or something than to give me something. But I can recognize when others are giving me gifts, and that's because they love me. So gifts is number 3. Number 4 is acts of service. This one I learned because my husband started out being more about acts of service, and I didn't really recognize it at first. But as I started to read this book and do the test and look at how I give and receive love, I started to notice how many things he offered to do. He'd ask to take out the trash, if I needed anything at the store. Did I need him to run an errand for me? There was always lots of offers to do things. And I realized that acts of service was his love language. At least it was at the beginning of our marriage. I think it's shifted a little bit. But and that's because that was a habit of his. And that's how his family showed love to each other, was acts of service. And that's what he learned. And it's funny because it's the exact, I think acts of service is probably the last. Out of the 5, I probably score the least under acts of service. So to me, while it makes a difference to know these things because I can recognize when I'm being offered, hey, do you want something at the store? Do you need something? That's a way of saying, I love you and I care about you. And now it can touch me a little bit more, and while recognizing that. But before, I said, I don't really care if you take out the trash. I don't really care if you go to the store. That doesn't evoke warm, fuzzy feelings in me, doing errands and taking out the trash. Yet the person whose love language is acts of service, they are wanting you to have warm, fuzzy feelings when they offer to take out the trash or unpack your bag or carry your bags for you. So and I know it might be more men that do acts of service, but at least in my experience, I could recognize it very quickly in men. So acts of service is number 4. Number 5 is physical touch. Now, this does not include sex, because if everyone thinks that physical touch is sex, then most people would say that their number 1 love language is physical touch, especially men. But that's not the case. Physical touch in the way of love language is more of the hand holding and the caressing, or the touching your partner when you're talking to them, or stroking their shoulder, or with a friend, always wanting to just touch them or give them a hug or embrace them and make sure that you're physically connected, and that's how you're showing them that you love them. So when we first took the test, I think mine was definitely physical touch for my romantic relationship, with quality time being the second. And it was interesting to look around at my family, at my other friends, and start to look at, well, what is their love language? Because you give love the way that you want to receive love. So if you're always doing acts of service, then that's probably your love language. And if someone who's doing acts of service is dating or with someone who has physical touch as their number 1 love language, both of you might be feeling very unloved or not having a lot of affectionate feelings because you're not talking the same language. And this all doesn't mean that you have to stop your love language and learn somebody else's 100%. It just means that you understand that if I spoke Spanish and you spoke French, that in order to talk with each other, we'd have to learn a different language. I'd have to learn a little bit of your language, and you'd have to learn a little bit of my language. Or we could learn a whole new language to communicate. But that's the basis of this book and of this principle. So I think it's really powerful to ask yourself, well, what is my love language? So how do you figure out your love language if you don't have the book or you haven't taken the test? Well, the online test is free, but there are 3 main questions that you could ask in order to discover someone else's love language. And we're going to cover that in just a minute. But first, I need to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Do you want to look and feel years younger? Learn more about your hormone health and how to get properly tested. Sign up for the Healthy Hormone Kit at nourishingwellness.com. It features the essential tests you need to tell your doctor to order for you to learn more about your current levels. Plus, you'll receive lots of healthy eating and lifestyle tips to improve your hormone health naturally. Again, that's www.nourishingwellness.com. Is your website working for you? If it's not, and you're frustrated with your brand, website, or current online results, Every Angle Media can help transform your existing business presence and build you a website that works when you're not working. Every Angle Media is a full-service web development firm that specializes in solving problems with open-source solutions. We offer complete design services, custom content management systems, fully integrated e-commerce solutions, cross-platform mobile development, and custom third-party integration, and we're here to help. Visit our site to see our work at everyanglemedia.com or give us a call at 310-798-7228. Again, that's everyanglemedia.com. Okay, now you're really excited about love languages. You know there's 5. And you want to start applying it to your life. You want to look at your partner or the people that you've dated or your family or your friends, the people who are most important to you. I think knowing the people who are most important to you, what their love language is really important because it allows you that when you feel love for them and you want to express it, that you choose to express it in their love language so they can feel it. If you choose to express it in your language and they don't share that same love language, then it's not going to get translated. The really powerful thing about this work is that you get choice on how to deliver the information. And we're going to talk about this on Freedom Friday because it's the same thing with astrology. When you know how someone looks at the world or how they communicate, you can deliver your information in a way they can hear it. Too many times people think that just because you say something means everyone interprets it the same way, and that's not true. And same thing for love. Everyone feels love differently. So there are 3 questions you can ask in order to figure out someone's love language. So number 1, how do they most often express love to others? Are they giving gifts all the time? Are they inviting over for dinner? That would be quality time and acts of service. Are they very complimentary? Do they always have their hand on you? Are they buying you little trinkets? So that's the first question. How are they, and they meaning your partner, your friends, your family, how do they often express love to others in what you can observe about them with other people and, of course, them with you? Number 2, what do they complain about most often? Because that's going to be a big key as to what need is not being met. The need is love. They want it in a certain way because that's the way they interpret it and feel it, and that's the way they communicate love. So what are they complaining about most often? And number 3, what are they requesting most often? So are they asking you to give them a hug or rub your back? Or are they asking you to... My husband used to ask me to do different things around the house. So to clean more often or to throw things out more often, different household chores, or to help him in the garden or to help him in the garage. So it was obvious that his was acts of service because he would request my attention to that act of service, and that would always translate to him as that I care because I'm taking time out to do an an act of service with him, and he would feel love from that. So the third question is, what are they requesting from you? And that, again, is normally their love language. It's different in your children. It's different in your mother and father and your siblings. So if you really want to communicate love in the most effective way to the people that you love, start asking yourself what their love language is. And of course, figure out what yours is. Because if you're in a relationship where you're frustrated and you feel unimportant to the other person, it's probably just a very simple communication issue. And unless you understand the 5 love languages and apply them, then people just stay confused and you make up these stories about how someone doesn't love you or you're not important to them because they never do X, Y, and Z. But they don't know to do X, Y, and Z because they speak a different love language than you do. So I hope today's been very interesting to you. I enjoyed bringing you the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. I recommend buying the book. I recommend taking the test, 5lovelanguages.com, and come on over to fittolove.tv and let me know how you liked today's show. And if you want to discuss love languages, like I said, I think everyone has a love language for your spouse or partner, as well as maybe even a different love language for your family and for your friends. So I hope this information will make a huge difference in the way you give and receive love to the people that are most important to you in your life.
Looking for an engaging and inspiring speaker? Does your group need a good jolt of positive thinking? Look no further than JJ Flizanes. Visit her site to check out her most requested topics and video examples. jjflizanes.com. That's jjflizanes.com.
Want up-to-date recipes, product reviews, exercises, and mental stimulation? Find step-by-step articles from top-notch experts on invisiblefitness.com/blog. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If this show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.